What's up guys, it's Graphic Phoenix back with another video today, and today I will have two things for you guys. We will be talking about the new chameleon's new name, as well as wild-caught chameleons in general. So, let's get into it and let's get started. You guys can't really see him right now, but hopefully he'll emerge throughout the video. His name, I decided, is Turok. T-U-R-O-K. This is a video game that came out around 2005-ish, the newest one at least. It's all about dinosaurs, and I figured, what kind of dinosaur do I have in my room? That is certainly a Jackson's chameleon. So with that being said, and nobody suggested that was just kind of on my own. Some of you guys didn't really get the concept of, I don't want any, like, nicknames or like jokes about his three horns or anything like that. Some of you got that, some of you didn't, but whatever, it is what it is. So that's all I really wanted to mention. I just kind of wanted to mention his name and why I picked it. I think it just suits him. He's really cool, and I know that everything will be doing well. So with that being said, we can move on to the topic of wild-caught reptiles in general. Obviously, my case specifically is with this Jackson's chameleon. Chances are some of the other ones in here are wild-caught as well. I know Sheldon the tortoise is not. I know Kai is not. I believe both Bowser and Stella are not wild-caught. It's probable that Sky is wild-caught. I'm not sure, though, the blue-tongued skink. Just because I got him from a pet store, and we'll be talking about that later on. This is basically going to be a video of what wild-caught is and how it affects things. Because some of you guys, when I mentioned it last video, were absolutely freaking out. So let's go over the process in general. First, I want to mention the Chameleon Breeders podcast. It's on iTunes. Their website is chameleonbreeders.com. And I strongly recommend you guys check that out. This is loosely based on their Wild Caught Chameleon podcast. I didn't even listen to the whole thing. I just kind of got a couple general ideas, and I'll put my own spin on it. But I strongly recommend you guys go check them out right now. And I'll leave a link in the description so you can go check them out. Bill Strand, the host, is one hell of a guy. He's a legend in the chameleon community, and he's done a lot for the hobby, so go check that out. I've certainly learned a ton from it, and I hope you guys can too. So let's go over the general process of wild capture. The general process is fairly simple, and it's not as glorified as some people might think, and it's probably not as horrific as some people might think, but it certainly is no delightful process. Now, the process of a wild capture is essentially collectors going out into whichever habitat they're located. These guys specifically in Africa, as well as Hawaii, some places, and really anywhere else that has wildcat reptiles. The capturers will essentially go into the forest on a 1-2 day expedition, something like that, and just collect their quota. Collect however many they can ship out this time, however many there's demand for. They will take them off their branch, put them in a bag, put them in a cage, put them wherever they put them, and continue on with their collecting. Now, they won't care for space, they won't care for really any of the individual reptiles' needs. It's basically just capture, get the next one. It's not a slow process. They're not going to be sitting there trying to coax the chameleon off the ledge. They're not going to be doing anything like that. It's going to be grab, snag, go. This presents a couple of risks. Obviously, it can injure the chameleon. It can injure their tails, their feet, even their ribs if they're like grabbing too hard. Now from there, they'll be collected at the facility. They'll be thrown in cages. Depending on the facility, obviously there are some that are better than others, and the price of the actual chameleon, reptile, whatever, dictates the kind of care they get. The reason this is the case is because the breeder basically wants to have the best looking and quality animals for higher prices, obviously. There's more demand for them, and if they beat them up, if they treat them poorly, then that customer will not return to them and will not get their more expensive reptile from this importer. So it's in the importer's best benefit that they have special care needs and will treat more expensive reptiles in general better. With more care, better caging requirements, everything like that, that goes into like housing a chameleon for X amount of time. This care brings on a whole host of problems. Obviously, a whole bunch of reptiles in the same proximity. They've all been living with the natural parasites that occur in the wild. Now they're all transmitting those parasites to each other. They're all in close proximity. There could be fighting, there could be aggression, there could be breeding, all of which can present risk. I'm not going to go into each individual thing right now, but just imagine, I'm sure you can put it together, that those aren't necessarily the best combination of traits. Now, after all of this has been said and done, likely the least amount of stress is attributed to the actual shipping. Typically it's overnight, 1 to 2 day shipping. It's just flying. Now, obviously, yes, there can be risks. If they're packaged in bags or clear containers, it can stress them out. But for the most part, this will be the least stressful part of their wild capture journey. They arrive to the importer. The importer, depending on the quality, the breeder that I got Turok from is a phenomenal importer. Wicked Exotics, I already mentioned them, but go check them out if you're in Canada. They ship Canada-wide, and they're great exporters. Boom. They're great importers. They did treat him with Pancure and an anti-flagellated protozoan. I don't know exactly how long they had him for, like how long he's been in captivity for, but for me, he's doing amazing. As you can see, he's eating. I do have a vet appointment for him on Monday, and we're going to go get a fecal exam and just an overall physical exam to make sure everything is working and looks good. So that's the important part. You got to look for the reputable importers. There are some that are in the business of moving reptiles. That is what they do. They'll get in 50 or 10 or 20 or 100 of X reptile, and their goal is to get them and get them out the door as fast as they possibly can. Now, these reptiles will probably be going to places like the big pet shops, whether it's PetSmart, Petco, Petland, whatever large reptile selling animal pet stores you have is probably where most of those are going. So you always want to be careful with that. But, like I said, it's all about the quality of the importer, so try and keep your eye out for good ones, and when you find them, note them. Spread their name. Treat them with the respect that they've treated your reptile, and it'll become a beneficial relationship for both the importer and the buyer. So after hearing that horrific capture process, you might be thinking, well, why on earth would I get a wild-caught chameleon? And it's not all bad. Some of us are looking for that adult chameleon that's being sold. Some of us are looking for nude blood into our genetic lines. You can't get that. If you export a male and a female and you just keep inbreeding and inbreeding and inbreeding and inbreeding and inbreeding, you're going to get a pile of mush by the end of things. Genes will be less stable. The heterozygous traits will be now homogeneous across the whole population in captivity, and that is not a good thing. The other thing is, the reptiles that you're looking for might not be that readily available in captivity. They might not be very often captive bred. I think of the time that obviously I've been living in Calgary, I've seen maybe 1 or 2 times where captive bred Jackson's chameleons have been sold. Some of them you just can't get captive bred, which is why people like me, people like Cody, other people in the reptile hobby are in this to breed and to get those captive genes out there. It's important. We do need captive populations. Most chameleons in general, as well as several other reptiles, hundreds of reptiles, are at the risk of extinction, and these assurance populations are critical to A, keep their line going, B, I doubt at something my level would be reintroducing them, and sometimes that's not the best for the environment, but that is and can be the same goal. This is very common amongst tortoise populations. If you haven't watched Camp Kennan's videos, do that. He's had several videos of like the plowshed tortoise, one of the star tortoises, and something else that are very critically endangered or extinct in the wild. Tortoise Survival Alliance, TSA, I believe that's what it is, and several other turtle and tortoise like breeders are trying to reestablish populations in the wild. Now, of course, at them being imported at such large numbers, or potentially large numbers, their price will also be significantly less than the price of a captive bred. Now, I don't know the exact rate, but this guy costed me $350. That's shipping included, that's everything. Now, a captive bred baby would probably be costing me anywhere from $200 to anywhere from about $250 to $300. Now, obviously, in the States, these guys are like $60. Like, they're cheap chameleons, which is why they run the risk of being impulse buys, and that is not good because that person will have no idea of parasite load, of the battles that they've gone through, the hardships that these chameleons and other reptiles have been through in the wild, that will affect them in the future. So moving on from that, there are challenges presented with these wild-caught chameleons, reptiles in general. Parasite load is probably the number one thing. In the wild, you gotta think, these have all mechanisms. Parasites are designed to live in the chameleon or in the reptile, and to live. Not to kill the reptile, because that would kill the parasite. It's not in the parasite's benefit to kill the reptile. However, with all the added stress of being ripped off a branch, shoved in a container, and shipped across the world, that can affect things a little bit in a negative way. Parasite overload can certainly kill your reptile. Now, if they haven't been treated, I strongly recommend going to get a vet checkup. They're not cheap, but it's in the best interest of your reptile. So the parasite risk is great amongst wild-caught chameleons and reptiles. So that is definitely something to look out for. Go get a vet check. The stresses associated with being in captivity can also overload. They've had this vast array of trees and food and everything for the last X amount of years of your life. Now, my Jackson's chameleon is not fully grown, so he's probably a juvenile. He's maybe 6 months, a year old, something like that. That leads him to adapt easier to captivity because he's had less experience in the wild. He's not been through all those battles and bruises and broken bones and everything like that. Just in general, they do not go through that at that young of an age. So that's important to factor in. If you get a full-blown adult from the wild, chances are he's going to have some bruises, broken bones, scars. He's going to have a harder time adapting to captivity because he's had so much time in the wild. Now, these guys only live maybe 5 to 7 years, so it's important that you get a juvenile. You look for a smaller chameleon, just because watching them grow up is amazing, and for those of you that have seen baby chameleons, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's kind of the life history of wild-caught reptiles. The other factors are they have now been taken out of the wild and put in a small cage, relatively. Obviously, yes, this is a bit of a small cage, but I will be moving him into the larger screen cage when I get the Mist King up and running and it's all set up for him. Obviously, there will be new stresses associated with that. They'll be exploring, they'll be wandering, they'll be wondering what the heck they're doing because they've been taken out of the wild and thrown in either a glass or mesh cage, depending on where you are. It's unnatural to them. So keep that in mind when acclimatizing a new chameleon to the captive environment. They are new to it, and don't bug them. Like, I haven't held him once since I took him out of his container, and this, me being here present, talking with him with a camera in his face, is the most stress I've had him go through since he's been here, and he's been here about a week. So after all this crazy talk, and probably new information for most of you reptile keepers out there, this is probably thinking, oh, but where could I find a wild-caught reptile? And you might be shocked to hear the answer, and that's pretty much everywhere. Pet stores, PetSmart, Petland, Petco, Pet this, Pet that, they're wild-caught. They get them from importers that, for most of the more odd species, like chameleons, I mean, pretty much name it, and if it's a lesser known reptile, chances are it's wild caught. If it's a more common reptile, then it's a 50-50 whether it's wild caught or captive bred. It all depends on the importer and what they're doing in their facility. But as I mentioned, they're found everywhere, you guys. Like, even the kid working at the counter and saying, these guys are great, take them, impulse buy, push, their goal is to sell you stuff. That's what they're going to do. They're going to try their hardest to send you home, whether you have prepared or not, with this brand new chameleon or brand new reptile. They want to make their sales goal nothing else. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. I do work at a like locally owned pet shop, and I make sure that they've done their research, and I make sure that they are ready for this new commitment that will be coming into their life. Now, things in Canada are significantly more expensive than they are in the States, so impulse buys are not quite as common, but they certainly do still occur. The worst part about those big box pet stores is that the people there probably don't even know they're wild caught. Not really a trick of the trade, but it's what happens. They are not informed of where these reptiles come from, and they are unsure as to whether wild caught or what they are. They have no idea. So if you're getting it from a pet store, assume that it's wild caught. Get it a vet check. Get it a fecal exam. I mean, the fecal exam's like $30 or probably less in the States. So shell out that money and see what might be going on with your chameleon. Because you just bought this new best friend and you want him to live. You want him to do well. You want him to strive. You want to see him grow. You do not want to see him perish due to parasite infestation and overload. Okay. I think I'm kind of done my rant on wild-caught chameleons and reptiles in general. I know some of you are really scared. Like I said, there are substantial benefits. Sometimes the only thing you have left is wild-caught reptiles. That's where it all started, right? So don't hate on people that get wild chameleons or reptiles in general, but make sure that you know the risks associated with that and you're prepared to take them into your home and to deal with it. Like I said, rant over. I hope you guys learned something. Like I said, go check out that podcast. I've learned a lot. And I'm disappointed that they're like 21 episodes in and I found it this early because I think I've listened to every episode like 3 times. So, yeah. It's very interested for those of you that like to learn and want to learn more and have a burning desire to learn more about the hobby that you are in. It is something that I cannot recommend anymore. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It's a long video, I know that, but I really needed to get this off my chest because I was actually kind of upset because people were like, oh, how could you go take this from the wild? And I'm like, dude, I live in Canada. I didn't go over there and pick a chameleon from a tree. This was my option, this is what I took. There are risks associated with that, and I'm prepared to take those on. So with that in mind, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys learned something. In the comments down below, if you made it this far, let me know what you think of wild-caught animals. I'm not going to say like my personal opinion. Obviously, I'm okay with them because I own one. I don't think it's good, but it can be necessary at certain times. So if you liked the video, drop a like down below. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. I will read and respond to as many comments as possible, so drop your opinion in the comment section down below, as well as any other questions, comments, concerns that I might have covered on my boy Turok here. Subscribe to my channel for more reptile, shrimp, frog, and plant videos in the future. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great weekend. Graphic Phoenix is out of here.